In this tutorial, we're going to make some banners. There's a couple of things we're going to cover. We're going to talk about working with an opacity map, as well as working with the cloth modifier. So these are just some examples of banners. What we're going to do is we're going to start with our wood master file that we had created when we created our weapon rack. All right, so here's my individual wooden pieces. I'm going to go ahead and say File, Save As. I'm going to call this Banner and save it, because I don't want to save over my wood masterpieces. So there we go, Banner. So I'm going to take this guy here, and I'm actually going to scale him. I'm going to click and hold and go all the way to the bottom, so I'm on squash and stretch. Now I want to scale him on Z, and what squash and stretch does is as you scale it, right, what it's going to do is it's going to retain its mass. So if you go small, he squishes out. If you go up, he gets tall. So I want to have a thinner post that's taller, right? So he's about twice as tall, probably a little bit too much. There you go. So he's like, yeah, I think that's good. If you look down here at the number, I have 55, 55, 180. That's good. Like I could probably go ahead and type in 50, 50, 200. And I think that'd be fine. And if you were to look here, Alt Z, the texture is stretching, but it's not stretching too much. If I changed any more than that, it'd probably be stretching too much. All right, so now let's take this piece. I'm going to go to the front, and I'm going to right click and clone it as a copy, and then just turn on my angle snap. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, and then move it up here, kind of over to the side. Let's just scale him in, but let's go back up here and just put it on regular scale. So I'm just going to bring it in a little bit. There we go. Just kind of do something like this. It's kind of sitting on there. And I'm going to take this piece of wood here. Actually, I'm going to right click and clone it as a copy and bring it over. I'm going to go to my scale, and I'm going to change my scale to local. Scale this down on the Z. There we go. Let's hit F3 so shaded. That still looks fine to me. What I want to do though is move it so it's not kind of sitting in there. It's kind of sitting on top of it. There we go. Maybe we'll play around with this, pull this guy over a little bit, and then take this guy here. Let's clone him over as a copy. So what I did there was I held shift and moved it. I'm just going to right click, say clone, and copy. That's a little bit easier for people to follow along with. We'll restore our viewport. I'm going to go into rotate this over, kind of move it up here. There we go. Now he's up there on the other side. And if we were to look at this from the side, there it is. There's kind of our posts. We can even take these guys. I think we'll probably just leave it like that. All right, so let's get a plane out here in the world. I'm going to come plane, click on plane. I'm just going to click and drag. There we go. Let's turn on edged faces here so we can see. And I'm going to call this banner underscore HP. Now, when you're working with the cloth modifier, you need to have a lot of polygons for the simulation to work. So I'm going to put 100 by 200. Oops, let's flip those. Actually, we'll 200 by 300. Nope. There we go. Length of 300. Length segments 300. With segments 200, so it's a lot of vertex points in there. All right, let's move these guys, I'm going to move them out of the way. All right. Sorry, I'm trying to move with my middle mouse button. It's sticking a little bit. All right, so I'm going to take my cloth here, kind of move it over to the side. I'm going to grab all these pieces. I'm going to just kind of want to take the whole thing, and I'm going to come out here, and in the left view, just going to rotate it a little bit, like just going to rotate it to 5 units, so it's just hanging, leaning forward just a little bit. All right, there it is. It's kind of leaning forward. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here to create. I'm going to go over to helpers, right? So you have geometry, shapes, lights, cameras, helpers. When we click on helpers, there's one guy in here, a dummy. I'm just going to click anywhere and drag to create that. Now, dummy is just a node floating out in space. All right, you put it anywhere. Doesn't necessarily matter for purposes where you're putting it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my modifier list and select cloth. And now when I come in here, I can go into group. And group allows me to go in and select points. So I'm just going to select 3 points, the 2 corners up there, and the 1 corner down here. Now with those 3 points selected, I'm going to click on the Make Group button. You can name them whatever you want. And now I have a group here. And what I can do is once you have a group, you can click Node. And Node means you can click on an object in the scene. That's why I created the helper. Because now those will be associated with that helper. Wherever he is in the world, that's where they'll go. Now for our purposes, we just want them to sit there and not move. So next we're going to click Object Properties. I'm going to select my banner. And I need to say cloth. And then simulations, they recreate real world effects like gravity and things like that. And there's a lot of different settings in here you can adjust. I'm just going to come in here actually. I'm going to select one of these existing presets, right? And see how the settings change based in order to get the effect of burlap. I'm going to click OK. And now to see the simulation work, I simply come down here and click the Simulate button. So now my machine's going to go through and it's going to process this. And it's going to take it a little bit of time. So I'm going to pause the tutorial while this simulation runs, and I'll pick it back up when the simulation finishes. This may take a little bit of time for it to complete. All right, so that took a little while. I had paused it and I let my simulation run. So now you can come over here. You can see, there you go. It's got a nice cloth look to it. If you actually get in here and you hit play, you can actually see it kind of drift and fall. So, but you have those very expensive piece of geometry, and if it's not working quite right, you could always erase the simulation and adjust your settings and try it again. One big thing that helps is rotating it, like I just did. Now what I'm going to do is with it on the very last frame here, right click and say convert to editable poly to make that permanent. So that's my high poly. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to right click and clone it as banner underscore LP for a low poly. I'm going to make sure it's a copy and then right click and say hide unselected. So let's go back to our front view here. So there's a lot of polygons here. What we're going to do is optimize this down so it's less. So here I am, I'm in edge mode. I'm going to come up to modify selection, select, and I'm going to select one of these edges, not the very top one, but the one just underneath it. I'm going to modify selection and select dot ring. And I'm going to hit remove loop. That's going to get rid of every other edge. Same thing here. I'm going to go to the side, select one over, modify selection, do dot ring, and remove loop. So this is going through and it's simplifying my shape. I'm going to go through now and keep doing that. modify selection, do a dot ring, and then remove loop. And once more over here, another dot ring, and remove loop. See? Still have kind of the overall shape. Right? We're just simplifying it down. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to not select the very top one. I'm going to go to like the third one down and do modify selection dot ring, but I'm going to deselect the very topmost one. And I'm going to come down here and deselect this one towards the bottom. So I'm just kind of getting rid of stuff in the middle. And I'm going to come over and get this guy in the end, and once again do a dot ring, but then deselect the ones at the very end. So it's just these in the center, and remove. So I'm going to go into element here and click on this mesh and see this is 10,053 polygons. I could probably get through, so get rid of some more. Let's go back into edge. We'll do the same thing. I'm going to come in here and I'm actually going to grab this edge here and say modify selection and say dot loop. And I'm going to deselect the outermost edge here and the outermost edge here. And I'm going to say ring under selection, and I'm going to come up and under edit geometry click collapse. Let's do the same thing here. Grab this edge, modify selection, dot ring, and then just deselect the one at the very bottom, deselect the one at the very top, say ring, and collapse. Alright, so if I go into element and click on this, it's 300 polygons. That's nice and simple. One of the great things about doing this is when you go in and you look at your UVs for a model like this, it's actually already fitting perfectly inside there. So convert that to poly. So let's take this guy now, and what we're going to do is we're going to put another edit poly on it. Say file, export selected, and we're going to export this out as banner underscore LP. And save that. Right click, say hide selection. And I'm going to right click, say unhide by name. I'm going to select banner HP. And then let's just export that out. File, export selected, banner underscore HP. And save that. Alright, so that's my banners. Both of them are exported. I'm going to go ahead and save my scene. And I'm going to pause the tutorial one more time while I go ahead and load up Substance Painter. Okay, I have Substance Painter open, and so I'm going to come up here, say File, New, and I'm going to go ahead, as always, I'm working with that Unreal 4 template. Looks like I'm already in my wood folder, so I'm going to select my banner LP, open that up, and say OK. Now, because this model is half as wide, I got to go into my texture set settings and change that first value to be half, so it's 1024 by 2048. Now I can go into bake mesh maps. I need to remember to change that first value, so it's half, 1024 by 2048. And then I come in here and I select my high definition. There's my high definition, and I just click bake. So it's going to go through and it's going to bake out my textures for me, and then as soon as that's done, which it is, we'll go ahead and now go back to layers, and we're just going to take a cloth and put a cloth on there. And really, you pick out which one you want, whichever one you think works best. Fabric rough. What if I put this denim base on there? How does that look? That looks kind of good. I think let's go into the properties though for that and take a look and see what kind of options we have. What we can maybe do is if we right click and duplicate that layer, I bet I can come in here and say something like screen, and then maybe duplicate it again, and maybe one more time. That's sort of a cheap way to go in and to increase, kind of brighten it up. Another thing I could probably should do with this is, as I'm looking at it, I wonder if we want to come in here and maybe scale this 2 times. So let's go into each of these and change the scale. There we go. So now it's scaling. You can see it does now, it's repeating a little bit, so maybe on some of them, I'm just going to click F in this window. Maybe I'll just take some of them and offset them a little bit. Since I am kind of stacking a couple on top of each other, gives me a good opportunity to kind of mix it up. Alright, I think that kind of works. It's a nice simple looking banner. Let's go ahead and we'll just export that out. And so we'll go up to Max, Scenes, Benjamin. Oops, I'm not going to my razor. I'm going to go to the wood. Select that folder and let's export that out. Alright, I'm done with Substance. I'm going to close that. And now, wow, I had 2 of them open. I'm surprised it didn't crash. Let's pop open Photoshop, and I'm going to pause this while that loads. Alright, so here I have my different textures. There's my banner diffuse. I'm going to rename that banner underscore BC. And I'm just going to bring that here into Photoshop. If I zoom in, you can see there's the basic texture on it. I'm going to go ahead and select that background image and drag it down here so it clones it. Alright, and now let's save this. Right, and there's banner BC. We'll call it banner master and save. Alright, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on this guy. I'm going to click on this little folder option and then click on new layer, which is next to it. Come over to my color picker, click on that, and go all the way up to the top left corner. Say OK, and then I'm going to say edit, fill with foreground color. And now I'm going to click on new layer. I'm going to go back, click on that little color swatch, come down here and select black. Then I'm going to go to brushes. Just select whichever brush is here. And you can control the brush size by coming up here to brushes, and you can kind of adjust the size of it. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of along the edge, just real quick and rough, just kind of paint a little dark edge around it. And what I'm creating here is called an opacity mask. So anything that's white is going to show up, and anything that's black is going to be transparent, and that's not going to show up. All right. And I just don't want it to be this perfect square kind of sitting out there. So that's why I'm kind of doing this. Now I could go through and I could maybe, find a picture of a tear to get something more, nicer looking along there. But I mean, this will work. You could also switch between the two, or if you want to go into an eraser, you could erase if you do too much. There we go. That's good. So I'm going to click on where it says Group 1. I'm going to double click on that and call that Opacity. And I'm going to come up here at the top and say File, Save As. I'm going to change the type to PNG. I'm going to call it banner underscore O for opacity. So I'm saving a brand new texture off of this. There we go. So it's saving that. So let's hide that group. And now for this next one, let's go ahead. I'm going to just remove the background. Select that and trade that down in the trash can. Make another group here. Call it base color. I'm going to put my background copy in there. And now I can, inside here, if I want to put an image inside that, I certainly can. So I'm going to go ahead and grab an image I have that I want to drop in. Alright, so I open up this image of a skull. I'm going to come up here to the top, say window, arrange, 2 up vertical. So here's the image of the skull I have. I'm just going to, what I'm going to do is with both of them open, I'm going to grab this layer menu and just drag that in. Alright, and so let's move this around. So it looks like it doesn't match exactly the same size, and it does have a little bit of texture on it. So a couple things we can do. We can try using the wand tool. Make sure the tolerance is at 32 with anti-aliasing, and click in here. And that's going to select all of the kind of sort of textured area. Say select inverse and say layer. I know the shortcut for what I want to do. I'm going to do Control J, and that's going to take what I had selected and clone it to a new layer. Let's hide the one underneath it. That almost works. What happens if we have this now and we change our blend mode to multiply? That actually looks pretty good. I think one thing I want to do is take the base color. I'm going to say image, adjust, hue and saturation. And I may want to take this more over to be a little bit more tan, but more desaturated. There we go. And then I can take this skull, kind of reduce that down a little bit, so it's not quite as intense. There we go. And now I have my new diffuse, so I can say File, Save As. I'm going to change to PNG. And this will be my new banner base color, because I'm going to save over the old one. It says it already exists, so I'm going to replace it. Yes, okay. And then I can save this file. File, save, close, my default material. I don't need to change that. I don't need to change this. And if we look in here now, here's my new banner base color. My banner, I need to rename this, banner underscore N for normal, and then my banner, and what do we do the last one? AORM, ambient occlusion roughness metallic. Alright, so now we'll come back to max. Let's save our banner, and then I'm going to select my high poly and delete this, and now do File, Save As. I'm going to hit the little plus sign to save as a new version. Do unhide all. Alright, so inside here, let's open up our material editor. So rendering, material editor, slate material editor. And so there's our wood. If we can't find it, do material, get all scene materials, and I'll load them all in. What we need to do now is we're going to make a multi-sub object, and we're going to plug in the wood. Come on, there we go. Then we're going to bring in a new physical material. We're going to plug that in, and then we need to bring in a bitmap, and the bitmap we're going to bring in is going to be our banner base color, and we're going to bring in one more, and we're going to bring in our opacity. So let's build our material over here. I'm going to plug in this banner into base color map, and the opacity, let's see, I wonder, I'll try plugging this into cutout map. This physical material is new, it's a little bit different. We might not be able to see this in Max, we might have to wait to see this in another, when we plug it into a game engine. So let's go to our multi-sub object material, change the number of materials to 2. And now with that selected, I'm going to select all the wood and my banner, right click and assign material to selection. There we go. So the wood's all good. They're already set, but the banner, I need to select this guy. I need to assign it ID 2. There we go. Oh, there you go. So now if you look, you can see the edge is not perfect. The edge actually has our little tears in it. And if it's not quite lining up there, at the top, we can just raise him up a little bit so it kind of disappears into the top. And same thing on the side if we got to bring it over a little bit. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to delete these wood. We don't need them. I'm going to delete the helper. We don't need them. And to finish this all off, I'm going to go into create, right? And I changed from helpers to geometry. I'm going to make a box, keyboard entry. I'm going to set to length of 100, a width of 100, and a height of 100, and hit create. I'm doing that in the perspective view. Now I'll right click, convert that at poly. I'm going to go to attach and hit the settings dialog next to it. I'm going to select all these guys, everything in the scene, and attach them all together. And then I can come down, delete the box, and I can call this banner. And now what I have is a nice banner object that I could place anywhere I want. Ah, look at that. And so when I rotate around, I see there's a problem. The texture's on the wrong side. So really what I want to do, I'm going to go into select here. I'm going to click on the banner and then hit edit, select invert. And we'll just want to make sure we set ID 1 on the wood. So now the wood all has the same ID. It's not, some of it's not using ID 2. So we'll just click off of that. Actually, we'll just go to create. We have our banner selected, and let's just make sure if we go to rotate that all the values are zeroed out, so he's standing straight up. All right, and there you go. There's your banner.